cast list for this movie, and it's all like movie stars and TV stars and me. And I'm like, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things is, right? And I mean, I've always had a pretty good perspective about this stuff, and I thought, it'll be interesting to see if I keep this part, because everybody else is a TV star, right? So sure enough, I'm at home a few weeks later, and the phone rings, and it's this guy, Max. And he goes, hello, Jesse, it's Max. Listen, I've got a bit of bad news for you. And I said, okay, what's up? He goes, we love what you're doing with Blade Beat, but unfortunately, you know, we need to have celebrities in the movie to promote it on entertainment in the magazines and whatnot. So we've had to replace you with a very big celebrity, but we still want to have you as the guy who says over there. And I'm like, yeah, I'll be the guy that goes over there and makes the residuals, right? So they were going to replace me. So I said, listen, I kind of thought it was coming. It's cool, no worries, man. And he said, yeah, we're still going to have you do a bunch of stuff. I said, okay, cool. As we're hanging up the phone, I said to the guy, I go, hey man, I'm just curious, who did you get to replace me? And his exact words, he goes, we got Urkel.
not Jaleel White.
Not Jaleel White, Urkel.
No,
right?
nice.
So the title of my autobiography is going to be, We Got Urkel, Adventures in Show Business. And the funny thing is, Urkel just valet parked my car at Casa Vega 2 weeks ago. No, I'm just kidding. Come on, hey, listen, we're friends, man. It's a joke. Take it easy.
All right, the next question. That guy back there, yeah.
Just wanted to say thank you for coming.
Thanks for you. Thank you for coming too, man.
It's very kind of you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, what a way to spend New Year's Eve, right?
Yeah,
With a guy like a stormtrooper pointing a gun at you while you're answering questions.
You guys are actually one of the reasons I drove 11 hours.
Oh,
to this
thank
film.
you.
Oh my
I wanted to
goodness.
see you.
Well, you guys are the reason that we flew for, so there you go.
Well, I just wanted to say my kids grew up watching your show way back when. We loved it. I'm currently rewatching the series on Netflix right now.
How about that?
Isn't that awesome?
I am still amazed at the brilliance of your show.
You know
It's
what?
fantastic.
What is your name, sir?
Michael?
Mike, I got to tell you, that is one of the most sort of wonderful experiences of this whole thing, being able to not only be healthy and be doing, you know, our gigs 20 years later, but the incredible response to Animaniacs being on one of these new platforms. I'm telling you, when Animaniacs premiered in April, I believe it was April 1st, oddly enough, and my Twitter feed blew up. People were saying, is this an April Fool's joke? And my point was that it engendered such a response that people thought folks were screwing with them, you know, that it was that big a deal to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they would have been really, really angry if they had not really had Netflix on. I was so shocked that it was that big a deal. For 3 days, it was the #1 trending thing on Facebook. This is a show 20 years old, and to me what it does is show the incredible foresight of Tom Ruegger and Steven Spielberg and Gene McCarthy, and the fact that they put...
Sorry, Steven who?
Yeah, Steven is a guy, I bowl with him, you know.
Steve.
Nice Jewish kid from Phoenix. But 20 years later, it does the same thing that it did for my dad and I when we watched Rocky and Bullwinkle and Fraction Fairy Tales and, you know, Tom Slick and the Flintstones. 20 years later, it holds up beautifully.
Yes, it does.
And it is such
I'm seeing a lot of them for the first time. I'm seeing a lot of the episodes for the first time.
Yeah.
Because we did the voices.
Right.
We recorded the shows, but we might not have seen the finished product.
We were,
I know how the story ends.
We were recording the show at 4 in the afternoon when it was on TV, so yeah, very often.
That was actually the question.
It was after school. I wasn't allowed.
That is actually the question I wanted to ask you. How did each of you arrive at the voices for your characters?
Tress, why don't you start with this one?
Well, we had an idea of what the characters looked like, and we were lucky enough to be cast in roles that were us, you know, at our core, so it wasn't anything that we had to reach for. They knew that we could do it, and then we would come up with a voice, and they trusted us, for the most part, to decide what was appropriate for the character. I don't remember them doing much correction.
No,
you know, voice-wise.
all of us, with the exception of Jesse, because this kid, you know, this guy was
He's nuts.
selling crack in Hollywood, and all of a sudden got, oh, I'm sorry, was that you?
Yeah.
But the rest of us had had the good fortune of working with Mr. Spielberg and Andrea Romano and Tom Ruger on Tiny Toons and
Oh, yeah.
a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
So we already knew each other, but like Tress said, you find the older I get, I find out that the genius of a lot of people is knowing who to hire and then letting them do their thing. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No.
we all knew each other too, which was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd all worked on Tiny Toons, and so we kind of got first crack at the characters. And for me, I actually had the first appointment on the first day of auditions.
Wow, is that right?
They gave the 9 a.m. slot. They gave the 9 a.m. slot to the guy who was always late.
You're just getting in.
So I was the first person to read for the Brain, and the last person to read for the Brain.
Wow.
Over and done. Boom.
Andrea Romano told me they cast me on the spot. But what happened with me, I looked at the Brain and saw Orson Welles. I didn't know they were basing him on a writer named Tom Minton that was working in the building. So I just looked at that and went, oh, how nice, they've drawn me a little Orson Welles mouse. Because they know I do that from Orson Wales back on Tiny Toons. So I read it, they cast me, I read for everything else, and didn't get it. Because the right people got it. And that's my
That is called serendipity, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow.
And it took them, by the end of the day, they had thought they'd found their Pinky. The Pinky was going to be John Aston.
How about that?
From
Gomez Adams.
From the Addams Family TV show, and from Tasmania, where he played a very cheerful villain named Bull Gator, which I thought the idea of just a cheerful villain was hysterical. And at that point, it was going to be Aston, and the next day, this guy reads, and they went, nope, that's Pinky. This guy.
And the rest is Norv story.
But they made us wait quite a while before they made their casting decisions, and we were worried there.
Yeah, and Andrea, our lovely esteemed director and dear friend of ours, tells a story that, and it's not, I know it's true because it's experienced, I've actually experienced on more than one occasion, is that sometimes when you're lucky enough to work a lot, producers start to say, oh, Tress MacNeille, yeah, okay, she's great, we've heard. So you sometimes want to change your name or do something.
Sure.
Because
I've done that before.
The whole idea about this is to be chameleon-like, to not have people pigeonhole you, and to not be worried about the way you look or the way whether you fit the suit. And Andrea tells a story of we purposely numbered the final
I like that.
callbacks for Mr. Spielberg. They said, okay, 1 through 10 for Dot, 1 through 10 for Yakko, 1 through 10 for Pinky, etc. And so the producers say, okay, great, I'm going to pick number, I'm happy with either 3, 5, or 8. Any one of those actresses would be great. Well, they all were Tress.
Gotcha.
But I understand the logic because people go, we've heard Tress now, this is the 5th or 6th callback, and Tress is, it's the name. So instead of that, they just say, frankly, it's a toss-up. 8, 5, and 9 are all great. All right, great, they're all Tress. So as Tress said in Morty's, we were fortunate to be, as they say, luck is, and this is a great example of that, luck is when preparedness meets opportunity. And that is absolutely true, you guys. Irrespective of what you do for a living, when you've done your almost 10,000 hours and you get the opportunity and you don't blow it, that's the difference, is that sooner or later you get a shot. Whether or not you capitalize is really, up to you. Now, the upshot of the whole thing, and here we are 20 years later talking about it, is just a huge gift. That you never know. So we are incredibly fortunate, for sure.
My thing was that, isn't he good? He should run for something.
He's shy.
Yeah,
The Hills.
He's very good. He's very good. No, my whole thing was that I was a jingle singer. I was singing in jingles and I was singing in bands. And one thing led to another. And a guy I had sang for said, "Hey, they're casting voices for this Splash Mountain ride at Disneyland. Have you guys been on that ride? Okay, that's my voice all over that ride. I'm Brer Rabbit, I'm Brer Accountant, I'm Brer everything on that thing. So it's awesome. So I did that, then went back to singing. Then a year later, they asked me if I could do Roger Rabbit because they needed to do some replacement stuff with Roger Rabbit. So I said, "Jeepers, sure I could." And next thing you know, we were doing that. And that was great. And then I got an agent, and they said, "Hey, there's this Animaniacs thing." And I said, "Oh, cool." And I didn't know any of these guys, which was good because I wasn't intimidated. If I had known who they were when I met them, I might have been, but I've never really been intimidated anyway, so it would have been a whole new experience. So anyhow, when I went in for my audition, they said it's Wacko and all this stuff, and they let me pick characters, and I said, well, Wacko, because he doesn't wear pants. So I thought that would be a nice idea.
Which, oddly enough, Jess has requested on many occasions.
Yes, exactly, but I'm turning over a new leaf in 2017, man. It's going to be great.
Turn over to the big leaf.
So I was doing some goofy voice as Wacko, some crazy cartoon thing, and I got a call back, which is when they like you enough to see you again. And I walked in, and Andrea, our director, I was there, and she said, "Now you do impressions, right?" I said, "Yeah, I like doing impressions." She said, "Why don't you try like Elvis?" You know, for real. Now, nobody knows this. Can you imagine that? Be like, "Hey, man, can I call you Dadu? You know, hey, that's Babu, man. Hello, there's a potty emergency." Well, Elvis did have a potty emergency. Elvis was in a potty when he never had it. Anyhow, so I said, yeah. I said, "Well, hey, what about," and then she said, "What about the Beatles?" And I said, "Well, which one?" And she goes, "Don't they all sound the same?" And I said, "That's ridiculous. That would be like everybody from Texas sounding the same, right?" So I proceeded to start doing the Beatles. You know, I started by doing John, and I was doing this. Then I started doing Paul, and Paul's a bit more like friendly and warm and cuddly and all that sort of thing, you know. Then I started doing George, and George sounded like he had a cold and spoke slowly. And then there was Ringo, and I started talking like this, you know. So I was doing the Beatles. And she said, "That's pretty good, right? Come on, let's give it up." That was thanks, Rob. Yeah. See, that's a good party trick too. That's like the Rain Man thing. I got a lot of party tricks out of Animaniacs. Anyhow, she said, "Oh, I like John. Why don't you mess with John?" So I was going, "Hello, nurse," and talking like this and everything. And then they showed me a picture of him, and I saw that he was this little guy. And I said, "Well, he can't have a voice like a man if he's a small little person." So I just made his voice very little, and next thing you know, that was Wacko. And then I started working with these guys, and the rest is history, man. And here we go.
And isn't it funny how Wacko ends up looking like Jess? Wacko looks like you to
Yeah,
me.
he kind of does, I know. Even without the pant thing, he looks like me. Yeah.
Right there, yes, she was next, absolutely.
Alice in Wonderland.
Yes, thank you.
Hi,
You actually just answered one of my questions, which why does Wacko have a British accent? But my second question was, how much influence did you guys have over the writing of the characters? Obviously, you created the voices and created the character, but what about the writing of it?
The writing we leave to the writers. I mean, the writer, to me, on this show, the writers were kings. We were wonderful interpreters if we may pat ourselves on the back, but the terrific writing on the show, I never messed with it, I never ad-libbed. The writers, I've become good friends with several of them, Gordon Bressak, Charlie Howell, Peter Hastings. They said, our writing changed as you guys took on the characters. All of a sudden we heard their voices in our ears, and we began to write to you guys and your rhythms and gals and all of that, yeah. So if there was any influence on the writing, it was just that beautiful synchronicity that can happen between performer and writer as we become familiar with each other and become almost one thing.
Yeah, that's it. But you find that on a lot of the best projects, the writers, even when they are as good as they were on Animaniacs, if you come up with an ad-lib that's really funny, they're really happy to take it because they just want something that makes things better. We were blessed to have such great writers on that show that we did, but if we came up with funny stuff, more often than not, they ended up keeping it, you know? So
Yeah, we didn't try to do a whole lot of it, though. You don't want to insult them or anything, but yeah, just subtly.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
exactly.
Tress and Maurice have done, I don't even know how many Futuramas and Simpsons, and those consistently, the writing is just ridiculous on the show.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But I have to say, and I think I remember even...
And you don't improvise on those shows, really.
Sorry?
You don't improvise on those shows.
No, you don't. No, and but I remember looking at Tress, because I've had the good fortune of having that woman in my life for, gosh, a long time. I'm so proud of that woman for so many reasons. And the truth is, we have a lot of friends of ours, they're all who do this, but there really is no woman in the history of animation who has achieved the level of proficiency
Beauty.
that Tress McNeil has. Really.
Humility.
It's crazy.
He just made $5.
Yeah.
Great.
$5 US. But also, it is still up here. I mean, she's been up here for a long time and continues to
So
work
tired.
at such an incredible. It's astonishing. She was a waitress at the Last Supper. She's been around. And she got Jesus' phone number. That's incredible.
I know. He was a real cat.
But I remember looking at you during Animaniacs and thinking, seriously, unless you're on the